Jesus, all you got, yeah.
We're going to get right to this lesson. You know, this is one of the Lord's high and holy days. These days, sisters and brothers, ought to be kept. And the Lord has not given us these days to keep just so we will have some rituals to go through. Each one of these days represent the plan of God. I say it all the time. If you understand this 23rd chapter of Leviticus, you understand the plan of God. We're going to Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, because the Lord tells it all to you. And being that most of the world is founded on New Testament Christianity, they miss all of these things. They don't have a clue what's going on. And they're all saying that when Jesus comes back, we're going to be happy, but he's going to come upon you like a thief in the night, and by the time he comes back, you will have gone through a time that you never thought will exist on this earth. Because the time's going to come, sisters and brothers, when you are going to be informed of the fact that man is not very civilized as you see it. Because it's going to get real ugly. But in the meantime, the Lord wants us to deal with his high days so you will understand what is going on. Now, we start this in Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, because this is a real important feast like all of them, but this is the one feast that you're going to have to come back even and deal with even during the 1,000-year millennium period, sisters and brothers. Because this feast represents the ingathering of the people of God. Not only physical, but also spiritual. In the beginning and in the end. Now we're going to start this at 23:1, and we want to pay attention to what we read. Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, and verse 1. Okay, read it.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying,
Speak
unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, concerning the feast of the Lord.
Now look what he said now. Speaking to the children of Israel concerning the feast of the Lord. It didn't say the feast of the Jews, sisters and brothers. Because these are not Israel feasts. These are the Lord's feasts. Go ahead and read.
Which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations.
And you shall proclaim to be holy assemblies. Go ahead and read.
Even these are my feasts.
Even these are the feasts of the Lord, sisters and brothers. Skip down to verse 4 and read it.
These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their season.
These feasts have to be done at the time that the Lord said to them, and he said, these are holy assemblies, sisters and brothers. For you to be here is not a request. You know, people act like this is a request. It is not a request. This is a commandment from God that you keep these days. Now let's get down to the feast in question, which is tabernacle. Let's skip down to verse 33. Leviticus 23, and we're going to start at verse 33. And we're going to show you what this day stands for. You know, like you have a lot of people call themselves after certain things in the Bible, but if you ask them what does it stand for, they don't have a clue. Well, we want to make sure that you are not one of those people that don't have a clue when somebody asks you what these feasts mean. Verse 33. Go ahead.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying,
Go ahead.
The 15th day of this 7th month shall be the feast of tabernacles for 7 days unto the Lord.
Now he said the 15th day of this month, because it starts on the 15th, shall be a feast of tabernacle for 7 days unto the Lord. Go ahead and read.
On the first day shall be in holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein.
So this is on the first day shall be a holy assembly. And you are not supposed to go to work on this day. That's what servile work means when you work with somebody else. You're supposed to not work on this day. Go ahead and read.
7 days you shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. On the 8th day shall be in holy convocation unto you, and you shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. It is a solemn assembly, and you shall do no servile work therein.
Now the Lord told you that this feast is 7 days. So 7 days you should make an offering. But since Jesus died, sisters and brothers, we don't kill no more animals. But he said, but on the 8th day shall be a holy convocation due. It's a Sabbath. So we know that if this feast is just 7 days, the 8th day have to be something else.
That's right.
Cannot be the same thing, sisters and brothers. But the Lord ordered us to keep these feasts and to bring our families with us. We'll get back here. But let's go into Deuteronomy, the 16th chapter. Deuteronomy chapter 16. Somewhere along the line, somebody thought that this was a feast just for Israel to keep, and everybody else is to be left behind. 16, and let's start at verse 13. Deuteronomy 16, and we're going to start reading at verse 13. Okay, read it.
Thou shalt observe the feast of tabernacles 7 days. After that thou hast gathered in thy corn and thy wine.
Go ahead.
And thou shalt rejoice in thy feast, thou and thy son and thy daughter and thy manservant and thy maidservant and the Levite, the stranger and the fatherless and the widow that are within thy gates.
Now everybody is supposed to observe this, sisters and brothers. The sons, the daughters, the priests, the strangers, even, like I said, non-Israelites, or whoever is in thy gates. In other words, whoever is in the Lord's camp.
That's right.
Are supposed to serve this feast, keep this feast of tabernacle 7 days. It keeps stressing 7 days. And the Lord made it clear, because you know there's going to come a time when somebody might not understand this. What verse are we?
We're at verse 15.
Go ahead and read.
7 days shalt thou keep a solemn feast unto the Lord thy God in the place which the Lord shall choose.
See, sometimes, sisters and brothers, people think the word solemn assembly mean a day. But all the Lord's feasts are solemn. And all, when he said you ought to come together and have a holy convocation, that is an assembly, sisters and brothers. All of the feasts are holy. That means all of them are solemn assemblies. So 7 days you should keep a solemn feast unto the Lord thy God. Go ahead.
Because the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all thine increase and in all the works of thine hands. Therefore thou shalt surely rejoice.
And you're supposed to rejoice on this day. Go ahead and read.
3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose in the feast of unleavened bread.
Now, it's 3 times a year. This is not a request. All the males, and that lets you, we're supposed to bring everybody else with us. 3 times a year. The first one is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Go ahead and read.
And in the Feast of Weeks.
Feast of Weeks, which is called Pentecost. Go ahead and read.
And in the Feast of Tabernacles. And they shall not appear before the Lord empty.
And the Feast of Tabernacle, and you shall not appear before the Lord empty. It didn't even mention the 8 days, sisters and brothers. Because everybody's going to show up on this on this tabernacle. And the 8th day, then, is all in the hands of the Lord then. It's not asking you no more. He take over from that. But this Feast of Tabernacle, it is on us. Because this, sisters and brothers, represents a time that the Lord gave man. Sometimes we try to put these feasts and isolate them. But everything that the Lord do is a part of a greater house. So all Scripture tie together that we might get some better understanding. Now let's go into Exodus the 23rd chapter. Because we want to get all the names of this feast. Because the names define what it is. Exodus 23. Exodus chapter 23. And we're going to start reading at verse 14. Exodus 23 and verse 14. Okay, go ahead.
3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread.
That's the first one. Go ahead.
Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee, in the time appointed of the month Aviv.
Go ahead.
For in it thou camest out from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty.
He said that's the first one. Go ahead and read.
And the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors,
go ahead,
which thou hast sown in the field.
This feast of harvest, now we're talking Pentecost here. The first fruits, that's when you're going to have your first resurrection. Go ahead and read.
And the feast of ingathering.
And the feast of ingathering. That's the end of it, sisters and brothers. Once this tabernacle represents the end of all feasts, because after this ingathering, there are no more harvests. And this letting you know that you go to something else, sisters and brothers. And the feast of ingathering, go ahead.
Which is the end of the year, when thou hast gathered in thy labors out of the field.
When thou hast gathered in thy labors out of the field. But sisters and brothers, when you really understand this is going to be the feast of ingathering when the Lord have gathered in all of his labors out of the field.
That's right.
Because after that, man will no longer exist. So this feast is a 7-day feast. Actually, it's just like it is the weekly Sabbath day or like the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The Lord is letting you know 7 days he is giving this man. But after the 7th day, man no longer exists, sisters and brothers. But this is the Feast of Ingathering, the Feast of Tabernacles, the feast that the Lord bring all of his wheat into his barn for the last time. Let's go back to 25th chapter of Leviticus. Leviticus, the 25th chapter. Because I want you to understand, this is all about the Lord recovering his children, which he actually lost in the Garden of Eden, sisters and brothers. This thing has been a long time. That's why when you read about Jesus being slain, it's always talking about slain from the foundation of the world. It's just like you had this century-old argument, who killed Jesus? You know, the church, universal church, which is called Catholic, said the Jews killed Jesus. Then the people that call themselves said the Romans killed Jesus. But sisters and brothers, Adam killed Jesus. Because the day that Adam sinned against God and death was introduced into the creation, Jesus had to die to deliver this creation. Had nothing to do. It was already etched in stone, sisters and brothers. Actually, if somebody knew some prophecy, that argument would never come up. To hear somebody argue about whether the Jews killed him or whether the Romans killed him, these are people that have no understanding because it's already been cast in stone. And it cannot be changed. So Leviticus, the 25th chapter, because we got to count this whole thing down and look at the time when the Lord's going to come, and he have it all laid out. Let's start Leviticus 25 and verse 1. Go ahead and read.
And the Lord spake unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them,
Go ahead.
When ye come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord.
See, the Lord is based everything on 7 days, sisters and brothers. Now, when you come into the land shall keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. Go ahead and read.
6 years thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard,
Go ahead.
and gather in the fruit thereof. But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land.
Go ahead.
A Sabbath for the Lord. Thou shalt neither sow thy field nor prune thy vineyard.
Now, he's using the same scale, sisters and brothers, because the Lord is trying to tell this man, I have given you 7 days, 7,000 years. This is man. We're not talking about the earth now. We're talking man. To get this thing right. And once that 7 days are over, whether you have it right or not, your time is over with. So he uses the field. So now you prune your field for 6 days. And on the 7th day, you let it rest. Go ahead and read.
That which groweth of its own accord of thy harvest thou shalt not reap. Neither gather the grapes of thy vine undressed. For it is a year of rest unto the land.
Now he lets you know, he even let your land rest, because the Lord wants to keep reminding you that you got 7 days, man. You better get it right. You got 7 days. Once the 7 days is over with, you're either going to go to the good side of the kingdom or you going to the bad side of the kingdom. There ain't going to be no discussion and no reprieve. There will be no more Garden of Eden, sisters and brothers. You got 7 days. That's what you have. Skip down to verse 8 and go ahead.
And thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years unto thee. 7 times 7 years.
Go ahead.
And the space of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto thee 49 years. Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month.
Go ahead.
In the day of atonement shall you make the trumpet sound throughout all your land.
Now, he said, now, when you get down, you're going to number you 7 times 7, which is 49 years, and the 50th, until the day after tomorrow, the 50th year. Then you are going to sound the trumpet of Jubilee. That is the trumpet, sisters and brothers. That's the last trumpet that's going to be sound. That's when the Lord is going to directly intervene. Let's look at this trumpet before we go into the further. Let's go into Matthew, the 24th chapter. Matthew 24, because I want to let you know what's going to happen in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, which is the Day of Atonement. Then you're going to cause this trumpet to sound, sisters and brothers. The Lord had this thing orchestrated. We know what month he's going to come in, and we know what day of the month that he's going to come. People say, well, brother, the Lord told Peter them, nobody know the day or the time. That's in the Father. He told that to Peter then. Daniel asked the Lord about something that he didn't understand, and the Lord told Daniel, close up the book, Daniel, until the time of the end. Then they're going to run to and fro in the streets, and knowledge is going to be increased. People got to understand, God is a God that deals with a need to know. It wasn't important for Daniel to know what's going to happen in these last days. The important thing was for him to write them so we would know what's going to happen in the last day. So we know what month. All we got to do is watch the signs. And there's certain signs that's going to happen, sisters and brothers. When that takes place, I will tell you the day and the time. That's why Jesus said, watch the signs. He didn't say do no numbers, don't do no counting until you see this particular sign. Then he've already did the numbers for you, and he've already done the counting for you. So the word of God is no great mystery, sisters and brothers. All you got to do is read it and understand it. Matthew 24, and we're going to start at verse 29. Now this is when the Lord is going to come on the 10th day of the 7th month, on the Day of Atonement. This is what's going to happen. Go ahead and read.
Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened.
Go ahead.
And the moon shall not give her light. And the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken.
Now, first thing is the heavens going to dissolve, like Job said. Ain't going to be no more. But then the Lord is preparing to come. Now, go ahead and read.
And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn.
Go ahead.
And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory.
Now, the first thing is, he said the tribes of the earth going to be mourned. Going to mourn when he comes. Why? Because they're going to find out that Jesus ain't so sweet and fluffy and lovely as they think. Jesus going to kill a lot of people, sisters and brothers. I mean, a lot of people. So he is going to come, and all the tribes of the earth going to mourn because of what he's going to do. Go ahead and read. What verse?
31. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet.
Go ahead.
And they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other.
Now, this is a double elect starting, sisters and brothers. The first elect is going to be changed at the 7th. But then the other elect that he's talking here is the children of Israel. That lets you know that Jesus... that Israel, the real Israelites, cannot be recovered until Jesus is back on his earth, sisters and brothers. Now let's go and look at this a little bit. But remember, this is when that great trumpet is going to be blown. Now let's go into Isaiah, the 27th chapter. Because it's all set around signs. It's all set around action that the Lord is going to take. And everything that the Lord get ready to do, he always sounded the trumpet. That's why we had the memorial of the blowing of the trumpets. Because the trumpet is going to let everybody know what's going on. If you have some understanding, you can call it blow by blow, sisters and brothers. Isaiah 27, and we're going to start at verse 12. Isaiah 27, and we're going to start at verse 12. 27 and 12. Okay, read.
And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall beat off from the channel of the river unto the stream of Egypt.
Go ahead.
And ye shall be gathered one by one, O ye children of Israel.
Look, sisters and brothers, this is the Lord do stuff. All you have to do is know what he did yesterday, and you know what he's going to do tomorrow. So he's going to come, and he said, I'm going to gather you one by one, O Israel. Go ahead and read. When is that?
And it shall come to pass in that day that great trumpet shall be blown.
He said, it shall come to pass in that day that great trumpet shall be blown. Go ahead.
And they shall come which were ready to perish in the land of Assyria, and the outcasts in the land of Egypt.
Go ahead.
And shall worship the Lord in the holy mount at Jerusalem.
Now look, not only that people that's about to come to nothing or die in trouble in Egypt, also in Assyria, because that's where the 9 tribes are scattered among the sons of Ham, sisters and brothers. Don't have nothing to do, and the sons of Ham is treating Israel worse than the sons of Japheth.
That's right.
That's why I tell people all the time, when you look, well, you know, my African brother, it don't have nothing to do with the color. He is not your brother. And if you go, he will show you that he is not your brother. He said they was about to perish, didn't they?
Yep.
But when that trumpet is blown, that's when everything's going to be stopped. Now let's do this thing all over again. Well, that's going to happen when that trumpet is blown. Let's go into 1 Thessalonians, the 4th chapter. That's what I tell people all the time. It's not about color, sisters and brothers. It is about the Word of God. All that simple. 1 Thessalonians, the 4th chapter. And we're going to start reading at verse 14. 4 and 14. 1 Thessalonians 4 and 14. Okay, go ahead.
For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him.
Go ahead.
For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep.
Now this is something that I always looked at and I marvel at. People go and tell you that this is the rapture. But then these same people have told you that your loved ones in heaven smiling down on you. These same people have told you that old rotten, no good John is in hell being barbecued by Satan. So if that's the case, then who is it that's dead that's going to be raised? Everybody's getting their reward. Or either who is it that's going to stand in judgment, being that everybody look like they've been judged already. If your mama's in heaven smiling down, don't you think she's been judged right? And if old no good John is in hell being barbecued, don't you think he done passed some bad judgment passed on him? But sisters and brothers, your mama is dead and old rotten John is dead. And when they going to come up, till the Lord shall descend, go ahead and read what verse?
Verse 16. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout.
He's going to descend from heaven with the shout. Go ahead.
With the voice of the archangel. And with the trump of God.
That's that trumpet of Jubilee, sisters and brothers. With the trump of God. Go ahead.
And the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds.
Go ahead.
To meet the Lord in the air. And so shall we ever be with the Lord.
Look, when that seventh trumpet sound, or that trumpet of Jubilee sound, or that great trumpet sound, whichever way they call it, it's the seventh trumpet, sisters and brothers. The dead going to be raised. The living going to be changed. Then we're going to meet the Lord in the air. But also, it is time for Israel to be delivered as a people. But it says, so, and we shall meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. But nobody asked the question is, where is that? Descend means he was coming down. Isn't that correct? And when you go ascend and meet him, that means y'all going to meet somewhere in between. And since the time when the man thought that the earth was flat, they've had the saints in the Lord suspended in the clouds. Somebody got to bring them down, sister and brother. Let's go into Zechariah the 14th chapter, and we're going to put them on the ground. Because meet mean meet. You come from California and I go to Chicago. We run into one another somewhere in between. That means we have met. However, if I stay here and you come from Chicago, from California to Chicago, then we're not meeting. You came to where I was. But the Lord said we're going to meet him in the air. Zechariah 14, and we're going to start reading at verse 1. Because the Lord is coming to fight, sisters and brothers, as well as call his saints out the grave and deliver his people. 14 and 1. Go ahead.
Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle.
Go ahead.
And the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled,
Go ahead.
and the women ravished. And half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city.
See, the Lord said he's going to gather all nations down to Jerusalem. That is what you call the Battle of Armageddon, sisters and brothers. And he tell you what's going to happen. The women's going to be raped. The houses are going to be rifled. That means they're going to shoot your houses up if you're there. Big carnage is going to take place. But now the Lord is getting ready to fight now. Go ahead and read.
Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives.
Now, when the Lord come, he just didn't stay suspended in the clouds with the people. Neither did he go back. He said he going to come, and his feet shall stand in that day up on the Mount of Olives. Where is that? Go ahead.
Which is before Jerusalem on the east.
Which is east of Jerusalem on this earth, sisters and brothers. Go ahead and read.
And the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof, toward the east and toward the west.
Go ahead.
And there shall be a very great valley. And half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it toward the south.
Look, when the Lord's feet hit that Mountain of Olives, that mountain is going to split because he's coming in his power then, sisters and brothers. And that mountain is going to separate, and the people that have been suffering for 3.5 years, they're going to be glad to see him. They're going to run to him. Go ahead and read.
And you shall flee to the valley of the mountains. So the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azal.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you shall flee like as you fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah.
Now look, the reason they run into the Lord, sisters and brothers, because these are the saints. Those that did not get into the place of safety, they have been whooped, they have been starved, they have been mutilated for close to 3.5 years. And when Jesus comes, they're going to be glad because these people knew what was happening. They just got caught outside the place of safety. So the Lord's going to come, and the people going to flee to him. Go ahead and read.
And the Lord my God shall come.
And the Lord my God shall come.
And all the saints with thee.
And all the saints with him. Where did he get these saints, sisters and brothers? They met him in the air. That's where he got them from. When that seventh trumpet blown, he started his descent. The dead is raised. The living changed. They met him in the air, and everybody come back down to this earth. Go ahead and read. What verse?
Verse 6. And it shall come to pass in that day
Go ahead.
that the light shall not be clear, nor dark, but there shall be one day which shall be known to the Lord, not day nor night. But it shall come to pass that at evening time it shall be light.
I can't even imagine in my mind what that day going to look like. A day that don't look like day or night. I can't even come up with a picture in my mind. But it's going to be a day that we ain't never had before. Go ahead and read.
And it shall be in that day that living water shall go out from Jerusalem. Half of them toward the former sea, and half of them toward the hinder sea. In summer and in winter shall it be.
Look, another lesson we'll let you see. This is the one that's talking about Ezekiel, the 47th chapter. Another lesson, this is the Lord's plan to clean this earth up, because the earth is filthy, sisters and brothers. Go ahead and read.
And the Lord shall be king over all the earth.
And the Lord shall be king over what?
Over all the earth.
Over all the earth. Go ahead and read.
And that day shall there be one Lord.
Go ahead.
And his name one.
And there's going to be but one Lord. You're not going to have all of these different names for the Lord. To tell you the truth, other lessons and other scriptures will let you know that day the Lord is going to turn the world a pure language. And everybody is going to serve him on the same code. See, the Lord is the one that changes the language at the Tower of Babel, and he is the one that's going to put everybody back into the same language. He took it away, he's going to give it back. This is the Lord's going to do that when he comes. Skip down to verse 16 and go ahead.
And it shall come to pass that every one that is left of all nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles.
Look, the Lord is going to be in Jerusalem, sisters and brothers, and all nations got to come up. I don't know if every citizen, but at least somebody that represents that nation has got to come up once a year to keep this feast. That's how important it is. Because this is the feast of ingathering. This is the feast that the Lord's going to use to bring all of his saints into his kingdom. Everybody's got to go up to Jerusalem once a year. Every nation got to have at least a representative. Go ahead and read.
And it shall be that whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain.
Look, if you decide that I ain't going up there to Jerusalem to worship no Jesus, I'm going to do my thing. He ain't going to do nothing. He just ain't going to let it rain on your crops. By the time your crops stop growing and you get hungry enough, you will go wherever he wants you to go. See, the Lord know how to deal with you. He ain't going to beg you. He just cut your water off. So if you don't come up, it ain't going to rain on your crops. Go ahead and read.
And if the family of Egypt go not up and come not, that have no rain, there shall be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite the heathen that come not up to keep the feast of tabernacles. This shall be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all nations that come not up to keep the feast of tabernacles.
See, sisters and brothers, ain't the nations not dealing with this day now. They tell me that's the Jews' thing. But when the Lord come and set the kingdom up, they're going to deal with this day. Because this is an important day. This is the Feast of Ingathering. You're going to look over there, you're going to have France, you're going to have Germany, you're going to have Nigeria, you're going to have everybody there keeping the feast. You know why? Because they don't like getting hungry, sisters and brothers. This feast, the Feast of Tabernacles, which they said is the Jews' feast, but the Lord tell you this is the Lord's feast, because this is the Feast of Ingathering. I mean all nations. Let's go into Revelation the 15th chapter. I mean all nations, sisters and brothers. And we're going to start at verse 1. Revelation 15 and 1. Because this have to be kept. Because the Lord said everybody's going to come before him. And nobody is going to lay back and not be represented before the Lord when he's on this earth. Go ahead and read.
And I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God. And I saw, as it were, a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God.
Go ahead.
And they sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying, great and marvelous are thy works, Lord God Almighty. Just and true are thy ways, thou King of saints.
Go ahead.
Who shall not fear thee, O Lord, and glorify thy name? For thou only art holy. For all nations shall come up and worship before thee, for thy judgments are made manifest.
That's what they say. The angels and all the elders and everybody going to say, just and holy. They're going to sing the song of Moses. Just and holy, Lord God Almighty. Because your ways are just, and all nations going to come up and worship before. I mean, nobody's going to be left out. And what day? That's going to be this day, sisters and brothers, the Feast of Tabernacles. You're going to have to do it. And if you don't do it, he already told you the consequences. Now let's go back to Leviticus the 23rd chapter. Leviticus the 23rd chapter. Because this is the Feast of Ingathering, and everybody's going to keep this feast, sisters and brothers. Everybody. In fact, before we read that, let's go and read Leviticus 25th chapter. I'm going to start at 25 and verse 10, because you need to know about this day that the Lord is going to deliver. Leviticus 25, and we're going to start at verse 10. 25 and verse 10. Okay, read it.
And you shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land until all the inhabitants thereof.
This is 50th year. This is the year of Pentecost, sisters and brothers. You're going to proclaim liberty to all inhabitants of the earth. Go ahead and read.
It shall be a jubilee unto you, and you shall return every man unto his possession, and you shall return every man unto his family. A jubilee shall that 50th year be unto you. You shall not sow, neither reap that which groweth of itself in it.
Go ahead.
Nor gather the grapes in it of thy vine undressed. For it is the jubilee. It shall be holy unto you. You shall eat the increase thereof out of the field.
Go ahead.
In the year of this jubilee you shall return every man unto his possession.
That means everybody is going to go back to where he came from, sisters and brothers. Israel going to go back to the land of Israel, and the children of Japheth and children of Ham, they're going to go back to where they come from. In fact, the Lord tell you it's going to be, a lot of them going to do it sooner, because during the time of great tribulation, when the earth is going to get real ugly, it said they shall all return, and all turn to their own people, and they shall all flee to their own country. The Lord set the earth up the way he wanted it in the beginning, and everybody come from somewhere. And the Lord is going to let you know where you came from. So everybody's go back to their own possession because the Lord gave all of the sons of Noah a possession on this earth. Mm-hmm. It's just that man had messed around and taken somebody else. But still, now let's go back to Leviticus, the 23rd chapter. I just want to let you know, when that seventh trumpet is blown, now the Lord is here. He is the one that's going to be calling the shot. And once he come here, everybody got to come up from year to year to observe this feast, the Feast of Tabernacles. Because this word tabernacle have another side to it too. We are going to look at it. 23, and let's start at verse 39. 23 and verse 39. Okay, read.
Also on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruit of the land, you shall keep a feast unto the Lord 7 days. On the first day shall be a Sabbath.
Go ahead.
And on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath.
Remember, sister and brother, you cannot get 8 out of 7, can you? Mm-mm. So all you have is 7 days. But the 8th day is something else, which we're going to deal with in the time appointed. Go ahead and read.
And you shall take you on the first day the boughs of goodly trees, branches of palm trees,
Go ahead.
and the boughs of thick trees, and willows of the brook. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God 7 days.
Now look, let's have a look at this, sister and brother. Now you got to go out and get trees and boughs and limbs and stuff, and then you're supposed to rejoice for 7 days before your Lord. What are you going to do with these tree limbs? Put your marker right here because we're coming right back. What are we going to do with all this stuff? Let's go and see. Let's go into Nehemiah, the 8th chapter. Nehemiah, the 8th chapter. Well, we're going to get back here sooner or later anyway. Maybe I want to go another little way with you because I want you to really understand what's going on here. Nehemiah, that's a little book after 2nd Chronicles, sisters and brothers. Ezra, 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, and Nehemiah. Nehemiah, the 8th chapter. Because Israel, through all the years of captivity, they did what we did. They discovered a book with the Feast of the Lords in it. They stopped doing it even back then. And they discovered that book, and when they found out what they were supposed to do, they got about doing the master's business. We're going to start at verse 14. Nehemiah 8 and verse 14. See, we have, in fact, more time than not, Israel have lost track on the high days. Therefore, it's because we lost track on our God. And a lot of time we lost track on ourselves, sisters and brothers. Verse 14, go ahead.
And they found written in the law which the Lord had commanded by Moses that the children of Israel should dwell in booths in the feast of the 7th month. And that they should publish and proclaim in all their cities and in Jerusalem, saying, Go forth unto the mount and fetch olive branches and pine branches and myrtle branches and palm branches and branches of the thick trees to make booths as it is written.
Now look, they discovered in the book of the law. They didn't even know it was there. The first thing is the Lord said to have this feast in the 7 months, which is tabernacle. Second thing is you go out and get tree branches and all kind of foliage, and you ought to make booths. That means place to live in. You know, we got people call themselves trying to keep this. What they do, they go to hotels. And some people have gotten tents and gone out into the wilderness. It didn't say that. It said you're supposed to go and get the tree branches and make you boots and do what with them? Go, and where are we going to put them at? Go ahead and read.
So the people went forth and brought them and made themselves booths, every one upon the roof of his house.
Look where they put them at. See, it's not going out to a hotel or going into a tent. That is not a tree branch. He said they all went forth and they got themselves branches. They made themselves boots. Some on their housetops. Go ahead and read.
And in their courts.
And some made in the courtway. Go ahead and read.
And in the courts of the house of God.
And some of them made on the temple, in the courtway of the temple. Go ahead and read.
And in the street of the water gate. And in the street of the gate of Ephraim.
See, it wasn't that you go out, it's that you make these booths. Because out of these tree branches, because they temporarily dwell in, sisters and brothers. And you want to dwell in them because they have a greater meaning. Go ahead and read.
And all the congregation of them that were come again out of the captivity made booths and sat under the booths. For since the days of Joshua the son of Nun, unto that day had not the children of Israel done so.
See, they had forgotten about it. When Joshua died, Israel got hung up in all these pagan gods and all these pagan religions and all these pagan rituals until they forgot what they were supposed to do on this feast day. So now they was happy. They went and they got it and they all made them boots and they sat in the boots. Now if they forgot about this, you know they didn't understand. They didn't forgot about the real reason that we sat in these boots. Go ahead and read.
And there was very great gladness. Also day by day, from the first day unto the last day, he read in the book of the law of God, and they kept the feast 7 days. And on the 8th day was a solemn assembly according unto the manner.
Now how many days were they supposed to dwell in the booths, though?
7 days.
7 days, sisters and brothers. But on the 8th day, that means they had to get rid of the booths because they weren't dwelling in booths no more, because these booths represent something. It is not no accident that these temporary dwelling was done on the Feast of Tabernacles, because tabernacle cover a lot of areas, sisters and brothers. Now let's go and look at an area that we cover. Let's go into 2 Peter, the 13th chapter. 2 Peter, the 13th chapter. Because the Lord keep telling you, you got 7 days. 7 days, 7 days. Once the 7 days is over with, sisters and brothers, it is over with. If you're going to make your mark, if you're going to get it right with the Lord, you better get it in that time period. Like you hear people all the time, well, you know, the Lord gave me a second chance. No, he didn't give you a second chance. He gave you enough time to do what you got to do until you get it right. Second chance would be to take you back to the Garden of Eden. We ain't going there no more. So you got one great big chance. And what is that big chance? The rest of your life. Let's start 2 Peter. I'm putting the first chapter here. I'm always writing so quiet until I lose myself here. Let me see if this is it. Go ahead, 1 and 13. Go ahead. 1 and 13. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it meet, as long as I am in this tabernacle, to stir you up by putting you in remembrance.
What do you mean? I think it's good as long as I'm in this tabernacle to stir you up in remembrance. In this body, sisters and brothers. Because it ain't no accident that it's called Feast of Tabernacles. This is the last of it. Go ahead and read.
Knowing that shortly I must put off this my tabernacle, even as our Lord Jesus Christ hath showed me.
Knowing shortly, I got to put this tabernacle off. It's a temporary existence. This body is temporary. Go ahead and read.
Moreover, I will endeavor that ye may be able after my decease to have these things always in remembrance.
In other words, he said, look, I'm going to bring these things to you and remind you of what you need to do as long as I am living in this flesh and blood body. After a while, I'm going to have to divest myself with this body. But as long as I'm in it, I'm going to deal with it. Paul talked about the same thing, but they took it someplace else. Let's go into 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter. Because people don't have understanding, they try to put their spin on it, and it spins clean on out of reality. 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter. Because he's talking the same thing, sister and brother. Ain't nothing different. But people don't understand that. This is where you get this out-of-the-body experience. I was floating up and looking down on myself. Made movies about it. Even I got ghost whisperers. Give me a break, sisters and brothers. When you die, you ain't looking down on nothing. Verse 1. Go ahead.
For we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of God, and house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens.
Now he said we have a building. Now that's why he said, well, see, I got me a tabernacle in heaven. I say, look here, sisters and brothers, if that's the case, then how is it, what you going to do with this tabernacle when the Lord raises it up? Now you got your problem. You got to decide where you're going to live at. All he's saying that you have a heavenly tabernacle, one that's made after the order of spirit beings. Go ahead and read.
For in this we groan, earnestly desiring to be clothed upon with our house which is from heaven.
Now look, I groan because I'll be glad when I get that new body with my house from heaven. That's spiritual body. Can't get sick, don't hurt, don't get hungry, can't die.
That's right.
You don't groan for that. Something wrong with you. Go ahead and read.
If so be that being clothed, we shall not be found naked. For we that are in this tabernacle do groan, being burdened, not for that we would be unclothed, but clothed upon.
He said, now we in this tabernacle. So we are burdened. We are groaning. Not that we don't want this body, but still we got to deal with this body until another time comes. Go ahead and read.
That mortality might be swallowed up of life.
He said, but we want to be clothed upon, that mortality will be swallowed up of life. When is mortality swallowed up of life? What does mortality mean anyway? That means that your days are numbered, ain't it? But when he's going to be swallowed up with life, what life? Eternal life. Didn't the Lord say that he want to give you life, want you to have life and life abundantly? Let's go and show you when this is going to happen. Let's go into 1 Corinthians, the 15th chapter. That mortality is swallowed up of life. 1 Corinthians, the 15th chapter. And we're going to start reading at verse 35. Because the question is going to be asked that is never asked in church, sisters and brothers. It is so many things in the New Testament that the New Testament Christian never read until I'm starting to question if they are New Testament Christians. Because this is something that's never asked. Verse 35. Verse 35. Read it.
But some man will say, how are the dead raised up? And with what body do they come?
You ever heard that asked in your church?
No.
Everybody's talking about rapture. You don't even know what kind of body you're going to have. He said, but some men will ask, how are the dead raised and with what body will they come? We're not interested in that. Okay. We are interested in this body. Skip down to verse 44. Verse 44 and read it.
It is sown a natural body. It is raised a spiritual body.
So it is sown a natural body. It is raised a spiritual body. Go ahead and read.
There's a natural body and there's a spiritual body.
There's a natural and we're talking bodies here.
That's right.
We're not talking puffs of smoke. We're talking about bodies. There's a natural body and there's a spiritual body. What verse is it?
Verse 45.
Go ahead and read.
And so it is written. The first man, Adam, was made a living soul.
Go ahead.
The last Adam was made a quickening spirit.
Go ahead.
Howbeit that was not first which is spiritual, but that which is natural. And afterward that which is spiritual.
See, now we're natural. We're made of the earth. We are first. If you don't have a flesh and blood body, you cannot get a spiritual body, sisters and brothers, because this body is not the body that shall be, it bear grain. If you don't put corn in the ground, it cannot grow. If you don't have a body, it can't be changed. So it bear grain. What verse?
47.
The
first man is of the earth, earthy.
That is Adam. Go ahead and read.
The second man is the Lord from heaven.
And Jesus is the only one that's the spirit being now that's come from among flesh and blood being that died and rose again. Go ahead and read.
As is the earthy, such are they also that are earthy.
Go ahead.
And as is the heavenly, such are they also that are heavenly.
Now, I hear people all the time when you see our walks in the spirit, I say, yeah, I've been born again. You have? Like I will never forget, had to be about 35 years ago, had a brother always getting out there, I've been born again. You got to be born again. I read in John the 3rd chapter, one that's born of God is like the wind. You can walk by, you can hear, but you can't see it. I said, okay, if you are born again, walk by me, I can't see you. You can walk right on by. But I got to warn you, if I see you, I'm going to knock you out. 30-something years, he haven't walked by me. So he didn't believe in his born again. No. And God is my witness, I'd have knocked him out. Because sometimes you get tired of the foolishness, sisters and brothers. So he said that the first man, Adam, is of the earth, earthy, and the second man, Adam, is the Lord from heaven, the spirit man. Go ahead and read. What verse?
49. And as we have borne the image of the earthy,
go ahead,
we shall also bear the image of the heavenly.
Now, just like we have borne the image of the earthly, we are bearing it. We shall also bear the image of the heavenly. Skip down to verse 51 and go ahead. 51, go ahead.
Behold, I show you a mystery.
He said, I show you a mystery? Go ahead.
We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed.
Look, sisters and brothers, that is a mystery. You can hear people singing, everybody want to go to heaven, but don't nobody want to die. Everybody is not going to die, but everybody's going to be changed, sisters and brothers. He said, this is a mystery. Go ahead and read.
In a moment.
In a moment.
In the twinkling of an eye. At the last trump.
At what trump?
The last
The
trump.
last trump. There's that trumpet again. That trumpet of Jubilee. Go ahead and read.
For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed.
Go ahead.
For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality.
Look, this corruptible body, which is decomposing from the very day that it was born. That's why it grows up, grows old, get wrinkled, and die.
That's right.
This body must put on incorruption. This mortal body must put on immortality. Go ahead and read.
So when this corruptible shall have put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality,
go ahead.
Then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory.
Then shall be brought to pass that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. This is what Paul was telling you in 2 Corinthians, sisters and brothers. He wasn't talking about an outer body experience. He was telling you that, look, I want to get out of this old body, but I want to get my other body. In other words, you're not going to change residence. The body itself is going to be changed, sisters and brothers. From flesh and blood to spirit. But how long you have it to do? 7 days, sisters and brothers. After the 7th day, this tabernacle is over with. Let's go now to Leviticus, the 23rd chapter. Leviticus 23. So I just want to let you understand why you living in these boots. And let's see how long you're going to live in them. Leviticus 23. Leviticus 23. And we're going to start at verse 41. Well, we started back at verse 40. 23 and verse 40. We're going to read that again. Go ahead and read.
And you shall take you on the first day the boughs of goodly trees.
On the first day, the very first day of the Feast of Tabernacles. Go ahead and read.
Branches of palm trees. And the boughs of thick trees.
Go ahead.
And willows of the brook. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God 7 days.
Go ahead.
And you shall keep it a feast unto the Lord 7 days in the year. It shall be a statute forever in your generation. You shall celebrate it in the 7th month. You shall dwell in booths 7 days.
Go ahead.
All that are Israelites born shall dwell in booths.
See, not only is the Israelite born, but sisters and brothers, this time, that's why the Lord is going to be adopting the rest of the sons of Adam during that 1,000 years. That's why everybody's going to have to come up. He said, because you're going to dwell in these boots for 7 days, sisters and brothers, but you got 8 days here. Why just 7? Because on the 8th day, you something else. Go ahead and read.
That your generations may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in booths. When I brought them up out of the land of Egypt, I am the Lord your God.
He said, let you know that I made them dwell in booths. When I brought them out of Egypt, he said, I am the Lord your God. So sisters, and read that next verse. I want you to finish this. Go ahead and read.
And Moses declared unto the children of Israel the feast of the Lord.
Why was there no more feast of the Lord after this? Because now, that's all God going to have with man, sisters and brothers. He ain't going to have no more feast with man. The next feast that he going to have is going to be with God. Well, who is that? Everybody that makes the change, sisters and brothers. But how many days you have to do it? 7 days you live in the boots. Now let's back up to the 3rd chapter of this 23rd chapter. 3rd verse, rather. 3rd verse. Because the Lord set this right at the top of the feast days. He gave you the boundaries. He put you in the box that you got to operate in before he even got to the rest of the feast. To give you one message. This is all the time you have. Verse 3, read it.
6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest.
Go ahead.
And holy convocation. You shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwelling.
It says 6 days you should labor, but on the 7th day is a day of rest, sisters and brothers. So you should do no work on that 7th day, because it's a Sabbath of rest to the Lord. After that 7 days, it is all over with. The Lord did that at the very top of the feast to let you know. That's your nail in the wall. This is how much time you have. That's what you got to make your mark in this particular time, because you're not going to get beyond the 7th day as a mortal. Everything on the other side is an immortal, even if you're in the lake of fire.
That's right.
This is what you need to understand. So this is what this day is all about, sisters and brothers. The day of tabernacle, or the day of ingathering. This represents the day when the Lord's going to harvest all his saints. This represents the day, the last day that you are going to be flesh and blood. After this particular day, which is the seventh day, which is also called ingathering, there'll be no more flesh and blood. That's what this feast is all about. The Lord is telling you the same story over and over and over again. You got 7 days to get this thing right. Because after the 7th day, you're going to get what's coming to you. You're going to either be God in the good side of the kingdom, or you're going to be barbecue on the bad side of the kingdom. So now, before we get out of here, we're going to read one more thing. Because we are going to do what the Lord said. We are going to eat, drink, and we're going to be merry. Deuteronomy, the 14th chapter. Deuteronomy, the 14th chapter. We read all this, because we don't want to be breaking out wine, and we have some people in here that come from someplace else. We always have that are real holy. And they think that we sinning when we drink a little wine. Only people that think that are the people who don't understand what sin is. The book says sin is the transgression of the law. So we're going to show you what the Lord told Israel to do. And everybody that's a part of Israel that would serve the God of Israel. Verse 22, 14 and 22. Okay, read it.
Thou shalt truly tithe all the increase of thy seed, that the field bringeth forth year by year. And thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose to place his name there.
Now, most people think, we just don't talk about it. Most people think, well, you're supposed to take the tithe that we give every during the year to pull this feast off. No, this is a special tithe that you're supposed to make for this particular feast. We just do it because we ain't concerned about money. We're concerned about making sure that this feast go off. So I know if I was expecting every one of y'all to come up with enough money out of your pocket to pull this feast off, we all go to the lake of fire. Because you ain't going to do it. You're going to come up with that excuse, well, my rent was short last week. But I'm just telling you, it is supposed to be a special offering. Now go ahead and read. What verse are it?
Middle of 23. The tithe of thy corn, of thy wine, and of thine oil, and the firstlings of thy herds and of thy flocks.
Go ahead.
That thou mayest learn to fear the Lord thy God always. And if the way be too long for thee,
go ahead.
So that thou art not able to carry it, or if the place be too far from thee, which the Lord thy God shall choose to set his name there, where the Lord thy God hath blessed thee, then shalt thou turn it into money, and bind up the money in thine hand, and shall go unto the place which the Lord thy God shall choose.
Now look, the Lord, when Israel was a nation, they all went to Jerusalem. But wherever you are, when you find out about these, just like Nehemiah them did, you're supposed to carry out these feasts. And you supposed to, and you said that, well, the Lord didn't choose this. The God that I serve said, when there is two or more gathered together in my name, I'm among them. Didn't he tell you that? So as far as I'm concerned, he have chosen this place, or wherever we decide to hold these feasts. He said, but if the place be too far from you, because in those days, some brought cattle, some brought barley, some brought wheat, some brought corn. So everybody brought it, and some brought wine, and they all put it together to make this feast. However, if it's too far for you to drive your cattle, or too far for you to bring your corn, or whatever you're going to produce, then he said, sell it and get that same money and go to the place that I have chosen, and let's see what we're going to do with this money. Go ahead and read.
And thou shalt bestow that money for whatsoever thy soul lusteth after.
That means when it's bestowed, that means that you're going to use that money to buy whatsoever your soul lusted after. Go ahead and read.
For oxen.
For oxen.
Or for sheep.
For sheep.
Or for wine.
Or for wine.
Or for strong drink.
Or for Jack Daniels. And do what? Go ahead.
Or for whatsoever thy soul desires. And thou shalt eat there before the Lord thy God, and thou shalt rejoice, thou and thine household.
And you're going to eat, and you're going to rejoice before your God. That's what we're doing now. Before our God, you and your household, sisters and brothers.